Hi, and welcome to this really basic overview of DiSC profiling. This is another one of those personality tests, and you can do a million different tests, and I actually really like them because they give us an insight into who we are. But I can't stress this enough. Don't use it to box yourself or to box other people. This is just meant to help to give you some indicators about how you can preempt your own behavior, but how you can preempt other people's behavior and communicate with them more effectively. So let's dive straight in. I will share this screen, and as you can see, the DiSC personality survey or the analysis. This is used all over the world. It's really more about personal assessment. Like, you can get an idea of what someone else is, but with a lot of these personality tests, it's most useful in just becoming self-aware rather than using it to judge someone else. And DiSC is really good for helping people with teamwork and that sort of intergroup or intragroup communication. Because you understand the wavelength that each other is on. And so it's used a lot in workplaces. But what does DiSC stand for? It's dominance, influence, steadiness, or some people say steadfastness, or conscientiousness. And these are four different styles of personalities. And as you can see, dominance and influence, the two on top, are more bold. They're more sort of on the front foot, whereas conscientiousness and steadiness are more cautious. They tend to lag behind and weigh up the situation more. Similarly, dominance and conscientiousness are more skeptical. They will question everything, whereas influence and steadiness are more accepting of what they're told and more likely to sort of jump in and trust something or trust something by default. This is the four different, DiSC stands for the four different types of personalities that you find in the workplace, and they're not actually evenly spread. I think I might talk about this later, but people who are dominant tend to be confident, and they are go-getters. They want results. They don't like wasting time, right? People who are influence related, think of influences these days. It's actually quite a good parallel or a good example. They're more open, place an emphasis on relationships and influencing other people or persuading others. So they care a lot about what other people think of them and the way they come across. People who are steady tend to be very dependable. They're kind of like an anchor. I like referring to them as being steadfast. They care about being true, being sincere, to cooperate, and they don't like change. They like to keep things the same, I guess, as much as possible. People with a conscientious sort of personality care about quality and accuracy. It's all about doing things right. It's all about building up expertise and competency and doing things the right way. And so already you can see that there are four different personality styles that, if they're working together in the workplace, may clash with each other. But each of them has specific strengths, and a team needs all of those strengths. So if your work team is lacking some of these, then you might want to consider recruiting to fill that gap so that you don't have a sort of blind spot within your team. So as I said, think about it as bold and cautious, or accepting and skeptical. Within this group of four different things, here are some easy broad brush things to think about for the personality styles and the way that it embodies itself in someone. So dominant people are very driven. They're direct. They sometimes a little too direct, and they can hurt people's feelings because they're very blunt. They're decisive. So they will make a decision, and they're strong-willed. once they've made a decision, it's hard to shift them from it. They really have tickets on themselves sometimes. They're very confident, they're daring, fast-paced, determined. In an emergency, they're a really good person to have, because you don't want someone who's timid in an emergency trying to evacuate people from a dangerous position. And often in corporate worlds, dominant people tend to rise to the top more easily because their leadership skills are more easily identified and more easily valued by corporations. The influence people tend to be more charming and more collaborative. So already you can see they're more relational rather than just bulldozing through. They like to energize people and build up trust. So it's about inspiring people. They tend to be enthusiastic, sometimes to a fault, and a little bit impulsive sometimes. So they might not always have the most reasoned response to something, but they do tend to be optimistic and persuasive in the way that they do things. So they will be the ones who talk people round, and they're really good for PR. They may often be great for networking or dealing with an issue on the spur of the moment. So they're just fast thinking, and they can have an answer in a way that smooths over relationships. Now, the steadfast people or the steady people, they care about, well, they tend to come across as being calm and patient, and this calms everybody else down as well. They like things that are predictable, and they may not be the most interesting people on the planet to some other people, but they are a trustworthy person to those people. And so when times are hard, people may come to a steady person or a steadfast person because they don't need entertainment. They just need someone they can trust. They're very deliberate. So think of slow and steady wins the race sort of thing. And they're stable. They tend to be warm because they're more people oriented. They tend to be more passive. So they are on the back foot because they want to maintain relationship, and they let other people speak first and things like that. And they like things the way they are, so they're not going to rock the boat so much, and they tend to be quite loyal. Now, conscientious people are analytical. They think through things a lot. They're very cautious about the way they do things and systematic. They are often the thorn in the side of people who have an entrepreneurial spirit, because they're constantly slowing things down and saying, oh, but hang on, you haven't addressed the risk management. You haven't gone through a good process. Whereas someone who's more dominant will be going, I'm gung-ho. I just want to get stuff done today. And why are you holding me back? Conscientious people tend to be more private. They keep to themselves, keep their cards close to their chests. But they are more objective because they take the time to see more of the picture. They are also diplomatic because they've thought this through. They know what the consequences are going to be of different things, and they tend to be accurate about the way they do things because they're meticulous, and more reserved about the way that they respond. So if you think about this, about 10% of people tend to be dominant. So that's not a huge amount. Think of it as them being the drivers of society, right? Some people refer to the DiSC profile in terms of animals, and dominant is also is often seen as being an eagle. Like if you were to split them into 4 different types of birds, dominant person would be an eagle. They're the obvious leader who flies high. The person of influence would be a parrot. They're a bit more of a fast talker. They're very expressive. They're like 25% of the population. People who are steady, they're more like a dove. They bring the peace. they're gentle in the way they do things, they're stable and amicable or amiable about the way they do things. They're about 40% of the population. So that's a huge chunk. And then the last one is the people who are conscientious. They are like an owl. So they care about compliance, they care about being analytical, and they're 25% of the population. So what does this mean for us? It's really important when you think about how you communicate. Firstly, know who you are. So know whether you're more likely to bulldoze through people or sit back and observe and be stable or be cautious about things. But there are some other things to think about. Dominant people, they care about things like trophies and certificates. If you walk into someone's office or someone's home and their trophies or the certificates are on the wall, they care very much. They're most likely going to be dominant, and they don't like to lose. They don't like to lose control of things as well. People who are more influence based, they are scared of rejection and being shamed in public, but they're really good for building up other people and inspiring them. So people who do coaching and counseling, and they tend to really value their individuality and being different. People who are steady, they tend to be very much about cooperation, working with other people, helping other people, showing their appreciation really sincerely to others. And so all of these loyalty-based things. But if there is a loss of stability or if there is change that's unexpected, they really don't like it. And if there is conflict, they often don't like it, and they will back down rather than offend others or cause conflict. And people who are conscientious, well, they care most about quality and accuracy and growth, I guess. But they don't like, and they will be lifelong learners. They like to show what they're good at and the quality of their work, but they don't like being criticized, and they can't stand being in an environment that's like shoddy, and they don't like being wrong. So when you're thinking about how to deal with each of these, think about like if you're a steady person and you deal with someone who is dominant, instantly you'll know that when you talk to them, you don't need to tell them all the details. You just need to tell them the main facts. Don't care about the feelings. It's more about getting the data down. And when they have interrogated you over the data, then they will turn around and they'll probably sign on the dotted line straight away. Whereas someone who is an I or an S is probably more, someone who is an S or a C is probably more likely to ask questions and then say, I need to go away and have a think about it first. An I, a person who is a high I, is similar to a D in that they're more likely to step out but they're going to ask less questions. So they're just going to do things on impulse rather than having interrogated the situation. So you can already see how within the workplace or even working with your own clients, that can be a really useful thing to keep in mind, because the way that you communicate to people needs to be not from your own style, but in accordance with their style of what's going to be easiest for them to absorb. And so here's the wrap up. When you're communicating with people who are high D, give them the bottom line, be really brief, focus things. Don't waffle, don't go all over the place. Don't give generalizations. They want facts, and focus on solutions rather than problems, because they want to feel like they're going forward. When you're dealing with people who care about influence, talk about your experiences, because then they will feel like they identify with you. create time to allow for questions and talk so they can feel like they've been part of it. Focus on the positives again. Don't interrupt them though, and show respect for their personality style. Again, they don't like too many details, but they want to be inspired. Now, someone who is steadfast or steady cares about people who are trustworthy, people who they identify with on a personal level. So just be kind, be gracious towards them. Show that you care about them and be clear about your expectations of them so that there are no shocks going forward. Clarify everything. Be really polite and avoid conflict and confrontation. So the whole aggressive thing doesn't really work very well. And conscientious people, they care about the facts and the details. So come with all of that prepared in advance. Minimize all of the inspiring, fluffy talk and emotive language that an I will love. People who are conscientious will hate that, and they'll find it a reason to distrust you. Be patient with them, be diplomatic, keep persisting, because they're very slow and steady wins the race. Yeah, allow them to work independently. So in a workplace, they will not want to be distracted by everybody else. They'll want to go at their own pace. And don't worry if they seem detached. That's okay. They are probably just processing on their own terms and at their own pace. And allow time to build that relationship and build that common understanding of each other so that there isn't confusion and cross lines of communication. So here are some quick some quick quotes. Pretty much with a dominant, it's if I can't win, why bother? With a person of influence, it's like, yeah, if we're happy, then others will be happy too. With someone who is steady, then you're saying, well, if you want wisdom, then find the wonder in the everyday. That's a great sort of thing for them. And for conscientious people, they'll say, yes, you will waste less time if you explain it properly and do it right the first time than if you have to repeat it later on. And that is the DiSC profile. It's a really quick intro, but I hope that you find that really useful. And obviously, if you want to go into it in more detail, feel free to touch base with me, and we can delve into that either for you or for your team. I hope that's really useful and that you can put it into action today. Give it a shot.